Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And it's Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Well, it's 2 days before Christmas. And last night we saw Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
The third final film in the Star Wars trilogies. And
yes.
I'm sure there'll be another trilogy soon.
Yes. I mean, you think, what does that mean? It just means that they're probably going to come up with, like, a different set of characters in the same world.
Yeah. First thing I want to say is that I'm not interested in what Star Wars fans thought. You know, no one hates Star Wars like a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I don't care either.
I don't think they seem to really like it. I don't care. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it.
I had some problems, and I liked it more once I got into the swing of things. But overall, I thought, no, actually, I like this.
I not only liked it, but, I appreciated its production values. Because the films we've been seeing lately, they're very good on some levels, but actually they also feel kind of small budget, really. Even like Cats that we saw, that is quite an expensive film.
Yeah.
It felt low budget, right? And certainly things like Marriage Story or The Informer, things that I've very much liked. There's something kind of thrilling about seeing massive waves and massive shiny sets, and
they feel like it feels as big as it's supposed to.
That's right.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's a film that you see the budget, kind of, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We should say right from the beginning, spoilers the whole way. What is it? Rey is training to be a Jedi so she can fight Kylo Ren. There's stuff about the First Order, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Spoilers coming from here on, okay? Spoilerific review. So I'd say that the problem that I had kind of with the first 15 minutes before I got into the swing of things is that it seemed to have a real kind of response to what the critical fan response had been previously, which was it. So in episode 8...
Tell me more, yeah.
Oh, I will tell you more.
Yeah.
In episode 8, I think we kind of thought one of the most interesting decisions that was made in that film was to have Rey not be a part of a big dynasty, a big family. She wasn't a Skywalker, which is what everybody wanted. She has to turn out to be a Skywalker. And then it turned out, no, you're nobody. And, you might be very powerful in the Force, whatever, but you're not an important person, and that kind of, I think, really turned people off. Whereas we thought that was kind of interesting. But at the start of this, the film is really pushing hard the idea that your parents are important, right? And even though they're nobody, actually there's a secret, and it pushes it quite hard. 3 or 4 times they make significant mention of the fact her parents are going to come up in this, which I thought was disappointing and kind of a sop to the fans.
Yeah,
like the fans wanted this to the point where, and this is a major spoiler, right at the end of the film, the last line is Rey giving herself the surname Skywalker.
Yeah,
because it turns out she's not a Skywalker; she's a Palpatine, which is another thing. But it's like saying the fans wanted her to be a Skywalker. We're going to engineer it so she can be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also had problems with. I suppose I had problems with it just seeming like a less interesting film because. This is directed and co-written by J.J. Abrams again, whereas the last one was Rian Johnson. And J.J. Abrams did Episode 7, The Force Awakens, which we never covered on the podcast. It came out before we started doing this. And that film was a kind of a caper, right? And it was all about a map. We need to get this map so we can find out where Luke is. And this film does exactly the same thing. We need to find a map. Now it's the map to this hidden planet, Exegol, I think. And that's where Palpatine's hiding. That's where the showdown's going to be. So it has the same thing of just find the thing, go to the place. And it has a, sort of J.J. Abrams, hey guys, sense of adventure. Whereas Episode 8 had a real sense of, there was no adventure in that. It was the First Order is on your tail and you are dwindling in numbers, and the whole point of this film is to try and survive. Had a real sense of threat that J.J. Abrams films don't have.
Well, I don't know. I actually thought this film moved much better than
Episode 8.
The Rian Johnson.
Yeah, I think it moves really swiftly. I agree.
And I thought there was something, it was much more romantic. I think also it was more mythic. Like kind of, the way of lighting and framing and so on is kind of, evoking that. I also thought it's so interesting because there's a real project behind it, and you can see it in the way that Adam Driver is filmed. Yeah, Adam Driver is filmed as a film star, as a myth or something, right? He's made to be beautiful and huge, and his posture even, sometimes is just like what you see in statues, right? So, and I think it's obviously like kind of very deliberately done. The angles and the lenses are there to like flesh him out, and kind of, he's really kind of beautiful in this in a way that he's never been in any film before. Yeah, you could argue he's attractive or sexy or whatever.
Mind you, I think you did argue the same thing in the previous one.
Did I?
Maybe not to the same extent, but you certainly argued he's a sexy figure. He's filmed to be so.
Okay. Well, then I think this is the most movie star I've seen him in, actually. Yeah. And I think that's the work of the filmmakers. It's the deliberate kind of, attempt to do that. And I appreciate it.
There was a little moment of his which I absolutely adored, which was a real film star moment, which is when at the end he's surrounded by all those guards and he's unarmed, and then through the force transfer thing they've invented for this film, he gets a lightsaber off Rey.
Yes,
and then he holds the lightsaber and he does this little kind of wink or shrug or movement with his head, whatever it was exactly, that just sort of said, I got a lightsaber now, you aren't going to be able to beat me. And it was a real film star moment that I love. And really something that I don't expect from Adam Driver in particular. He never, like, as interesting as he is as an actor, I think it would be tough to say he normally has charm. But that was a charming moment.
Yes. It is the result of a process, right? You could see how his hair has been done and the angles at which he's filmed, and but it really works in the film, or it certainly kind of worked for me,
Yeah.
Actually, I thought my two favorite performances in the film were his and Richard E. Grant's.
You made a noise every time Richard E. Grant came on screen.
And I hate him, actually. I really appreciate his performance in this because it's so witty and he's so wittily deployed. Every time he appears, it's almost like, he brings something to the character, because it's almost like a punchline each time or a bit of humor each time, right? But it's meant to be a very threatening character, right?
Yeah, he's like the new First Order sort of general.
Yeah.
Very dry and very angry.
Yeah, and kind of camp, right? And actually, it's not just that his performance is kind of, that ironic, slightly camp thing. But actually, the film does that ironic camp thing with his character as well. So, the way he dies, it's almost like a joke.
Yeah, blasted out of a window in a spaceship.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. And you see it.
Yeah. So I thought he was marvelous. And as I said, I don't normally like him very much. I sometimes think he's very good. So he was very good in that the film with Melissa McCarthy where
Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Can You Ever Forgive Me? I thought he was very good in that. And he's good in many things, but I just don't like him for some reason. But this time, he completely charmed me.
Fair enough. We spoke a little bit before we split up yesterday about the way in which Rey and Kylo Ren interact.
Yes.
Which is a continuation of how they've interacted in the previous films, where there was a very interesting cross-cutting that they did, where you had the shot-reverse shot conversations between them, but they were in completely different locations across space. But the shot-reverse shot editing brought them together, and it was fascinating. And this has been developed here into not only do they have these conversations directly with each other through the Force, but they inhabit each other's spaces in interesting ways, and it's something that becomes part of the film. As I say, like ultimately it becomes a plot development because it's a way that she can give him a weapon at the end, like I described. And there's also this question of he wants to know where she is, and where she is in his quarters on his ship where he isn't, and it's only through a fight that they have through the Force in this kind of middle space that he sees Darth Vader's helmet, and that means he knows where she is. It's a fascinating kind of really fluid, and it all makes sense. You never ever question how this is working at all.
It's very brilliantly conceptualized, and then it's very well imaged.
Yeah, and then you were talking about it as a romantic thing, because ultimately at the end of this,
they
kiss.
Yes,
when Kylo sacrifices himself.
Yes,
to save her.
I couldn't believe, I don't know if you were also saying this, but I think certainly Stafford was, do you think they're having a romance? Do you think it's a... I thought, how could you not see it?
We spoke about this again in the previous podcast, and I'd expressed similar kind of ambivalence towards how much of a romantic relationship it was, but you said, and I quote, "They're hot for each other."
Yes.
But I think it's interesting that there's a moment here I felt just before they kiss when they could have and they didn't, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And it's only when it's all kind of all over and he's sacrificed himself that it's a kiss. Or no, it's a kiss.
They have this whole thing
he
about
saves her and then it's a kiss, isn't it?
they have this whole conversation about taking my hand, and I would have taken Ben's hand, but not.
That's right.
Whatever, and then like the whole concept of them is that they are one soul. They are like two halves of the same soul or something, right? Like they're kind of twin forces. I mean, that is like almost like an archetypal ancient romantic idea of romantic love. You know,
absolutely. And Palpatine is brought back to life, stealing the power of their bond together. Yeah. And he says it. Although I will say that Palpatine's dialogue, every line of dialogue he has, is incredibly clunky, including that. He says in a very arch sort of way, "It is the power of your bond that gives me life," and it's it's all very badly written, his stuff. But
I liked it.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought that was clunky. But the idea that it's pointing at, as you say, it's like it's absolutely in there. This makes it clearer than it has been in the previous films, and really, really evokes feeling for it as well.
Yes.
I felt for them.
Yes.
And I felt. I didn't think it made enough sense that Kylo Ren gave up the Kylo Ren name and turned back to Ben. He remembers his dad, and there's something going on there, but it didn't feel motivated enough. But I also forgave it because what it led to was interesting and evocative.
Yes, I liked all of that, and I loved the fact that the film now revolves around Daisy Richards. What's her name?
Daisy Ridley.
Daisy Ridley. So, I thought it's kind of brilliant the way that the film does it. I think it's brilliant the way that the film makes a connection between Carrie Fisher and her. And I also thought that, the film gave Carrie Fisher a great send-off. Kind of narratively. That was lovely to see. And in fact, I love the way that it brought in all of the original cast, actually. Because it wasn't like... it didn't feel like a fucking Stan Lee,
It felt more motivated than your cameos coming in. The characters did make sense. Although I did think... It did make me laugh when Rey kind of gives up and goes to that moon that Luke had marooned himself on and said, "I'm going to give up as well."
Yes.
And then he shows up out of a fire. Oh wow, beautiful, so evocative. And he shows up in that blue glow that all of the dead characters in Star Wars have. But then you cut and they're just like sat down having a chat, which is kind of funny because like it takes something that is a really beautiful sort of iconic visual thing and turns it into something quite basic and standard. And now I'm having a chat with the ghost. How long does the ghost get to hang out for?
It's true, but I love the fact that the film brought back Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and
Mark Hamill
and
Billy D. Williams,
all of them, So, but I did think that something that staff said yesterday that was really interesting was the way that the film tries to reconfigure questions of race so as to be more inclusive, but nonetheless ends up being quite racist in a way.
Okay, go on.
Well, the reason why is because, it brings in a multiracial cast, right? Like, Oscar Isaac is of Puerto Rican origin, and then, of course, you have John Boyega, who's really lovely in it, and so on.
He's British-Nigerian, I think.
Yeah, so the film does make a real effort to be inclusive, and yet kind of inevitably, structurally, and so on, all these are really subordinate characters. I mean, you're watching John Boyega, who I think is a real film star. He's very, very, in a way that Oscar Isaac isn't, right? So I think John Boyega is very, very charismatic to look at. He's always kind of doing something interesting, but he's given less to do in this film than previously, actually.
Yeah.
And then often he is paired in a minor plot point with other people of color, right? So that Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley,
they take their roles as the king and queen of the universe in the story.
So the film pays lip service to a kind of an inclusiveness.
Yeah, well,
but then structurally puts them all to the side anyway.
The trouble that I had really was that the character of Rose, who's played by Kelly Marie Tran, has so little to do in this. So the thing is, she and Finn, which is John Boyega, and Poe, which is Oscar Isaac, they were all secondary characters all along. But they did have kind of important plot points to pursue. And in this, far less so. And particularly Rose, whose entire job... For one thing, they all go off on this thing where Rey says, I'm going to go find this Sith map that gets us to where we need to be. And they're like, right, we're coming with you. But Rose doesn't get to. Right at the start of the film, Rose is just there babysitting like the rebels who you don't really see much of, right? So every now and again, like maybe 50 minutes into the film, she shows up again and goes, and now what do I do? She gets to be told what to do by someone. I really felt bad for her as an actor and as a character. Like I didn't understand why she had not been able to be included in this great quest they're all going on.
The film is already like 2 hours and 20 minutes long.
But why couldn't she be part of the gang? You know?
That's true.
She is part of the gang.
Yes.
You know, why can't she go off? Why can't she decide with Finn and Poe, I'm coming with you? Because they're the ones who decide on their own, we're coming with you. So I found that very disappointing, and I don't think she's treated very well.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I also think that the film is oddly bifurcated. So, you know, that on the one hand, you have to bring in Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and Billy Dee Williams, right? But you're only bringing them in to say goodbye to, right? You know, and then like the film moves in another direction, right? So there's like this kind of saying goodbye and this like doing something else, and you know, and in the middle of that, people who had more important roles in the previous episode, like Oscar Isaacs and like John Boyega, are kind of lost here. You know.
I know what you mean. Although I do think that you know, it ends up with that classic thing that we've seen in Star Wars before, of the final fight happens in two parts. You've got the huge fight in space with all the starships shooting each other, and you've also got the small fight between the important characters that's going to decide things. And I like the fact that in this, those are actually connected, because the Emperor Palpatine, who has been kept alive in this zombified form, basically says, if you want to stop all your friends dying, and he shows her, look, they're all dying. If you want to stop that, then you can take my place and become the next Sith Lord and stuff. And I like that it actually drew those together. But I do think that, in a sense, the film is a bit too slick for its own good. As I think I kind of intimated earlier, where I said that you don't ever really feel like they're going to fail at any point. Even when things are going quite badly, I never got the feeling like this might not all work out. You know, it's a film in which it is all going one way, essentially. Well, whereas, like I said, in episode 8, I really did get the feeling like I don't know how they're going to get out of this.
Mind you, I think we need a perspective, really. So, because, you know, I was watching this film yesterday and I was thinking, I don't care what people say, you know, these films, these last few films, are so vastly superior to the boring shit that George Lucas put out in the 90s. You know, that Ewan McGregor cycle. Like, it was...
90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, it was like watching paint dry, really. It was just awful, really. Not a spark of life in the whole thing.
No.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, kind of, I think, these have their flaws, but I think they're brilliant, actually. You know, they're exciting to watch. They're funny. You know, they do all that little, you know, Wookiee and robot-y humor. You know, they also kind of try to, you know, make a joke of just appearances of people from different planets or bird life or, kind of, you know, I think kind of the films are so much richer and they're kind of richer kind of texturally, you know, and also they're richer in the sense that they bring up, you know, all the things that the series has become famous for, because, you know, the thing is that these are films that on the one hand might look like B-movie stupid films, but they really ask all the important questions of life that, you know, kind of that, you know, people normally go to religions for, right? Like, you know, what is life, what is destiny, what is fate, who am I, right? Kind of, what are my do I have responsibilities, do I fulfill my desires, or, kind of, should I be good, right? Like, the film really does have all those questions. They were very obvious last night, right?
Yeah.
So I think the film, kind of posits all those questions or all those issues, it dramatizes them, and it does so in a world that seems to have depth and richness, and and that is exciting to watch, and actually beautiful to watch. Some of the shots were just beautiful, I thought.
Yeah, I agree, and I was surprised at how beautiful they were, considering I don't have a really high opinion of J.J. Abrams as a kind of visual stylist in some respects. I mean, I don't think he's bad. I mean, there are far worse kind of visual storytellers than he is, but I was surprised at the level of visual beauty, and I thought, the level I was getting into, just the look of it. And there are some of those beautifully composed shots that when they go into the sort of Palpatine's chamber on Exegor, whichever one it is, and they go through this sort of very long. There's like a very low ceiling to this entrance passage, and it's shot from a very, very long way away, and it's just this like horizontal line of blue
that beautiful,
that illuminates them. And when the two of them are fighting over the spaceship, when Kylo Ren and Rey are force fighting over the spaceship that is carrying Chewie, again, it's shot from this sudden angle, and it's beautifully composed to emphasise good, evil, the fight. And again, at the end, when she is fighting. When she's fighting Palpatine, you get some of that. And when Palpatine shoots up into the sky... In fact, he shoots all that lightning up into the sky to damage, incapacitate all of the rebel fighters. And, that had that beautiful symmetrical sort of thing. But it also had an element of light and dark in it, which I think was trying to get at a kind of... Remember the Holdo suicide moment from episode 8? I think it was trying to get some of that feeling of like a big space moment. Except the thing was, in there, all the sound dropped out, and it was a hugely dramatic thing.
Yes.
And in here, the sound really ramps up.
Yes.
It has a kind of slightly different sensibility of how to emphasise itself. But I think it still worked.
Yes, I mean, I thought all of that worked. It kind of dramatized and it added texture. And also I think the film was very witty with the normal adventure stuff. Right, the moment where they sink into that quicksand, right, and then kind of they appear in the tunnel. I thought that was like witty and fun.
There's a worm.
So
and that actually felt very quote unquote classic Star Wars-ish. Where if you go back to the original ones and you go back to the caper aspect of them, there was a sense of adventure and stuff which I think J.J. Abrams really gets the measure of here.
Yes.
I think I mentioned this before, that maybe I mentioned it on the episode 8 podcast, that the thing about J.J. Abrams, I think my brother told me, is that he always says on set, he's the kind of director who always says something to keep people motivated. And apparently he always says, is it delightful? Which you can totally see in his films. Like, what they're interested in is, in the moment, things have to delight their audience.
Well, what would Lubitsch say? That's exactly it.
Yeah. But I don't think that's always necessarily a positive thing, because I think that's something that in episode 7, I thought, led to a level of lightness that made it actually kind of a little bit forgettable. I think it's the worst of these new 3 films. The Force Awakens was. And that's not something that you can see Rian Johnson asking in episode 8, but I think it's something that would have, been to its detriment, because that was, you could, in a film that is going to such dark places, you can't be asking to delight people every second, But so I think that's something that you feel here, that sense of wanting an audience to be pleased at every moment.
Yes.
But it works here, really works.
I think it works, and I think it's very well done. So we've had all these discussions about film comedy and how people only often rely on the verbal, right, or on situation. Whereas, this was full of visual humor. The example that we gave of how Richard E. Grant dies, that's a funny joke. It's visual, right? It's not what he says. It's actually what you're shown happening to him that is the punchline, right?
Yeah.
So I really appreciated all of that.
Funny cuts as well. The whole situation with C-3PO. And how he says, you're never going to get me to open up my brain, and halfway through the sentence, cut, and there he is with his brain open. Very, very simple sort of basic comedy, but it really works. It got a good laugh. A lot of that. In fact, C-3PO got good laughs.
Yes. Everyone was with it.
But also, he got that emotional moment because his whole thing is he's going to have to. They arranged this sort of thing in the script where, in order for them to find out where this map points, he has to basically replace his own memory and shut himself down. And he has this moment where he gets to say goodbye to his friends.
Yes.
But not only was that surprisingly touching, but you get this huge close-up on C-3PO's face. And, it made me think just for the first time in a long time, like, how 70s that character looks. Like, it's such a... obviously it is. It comes from 1977. But it's such a funny sort of... Because technology has moved on so much and Star Wars is able to look so much more sort of wild than it did in the past, because there's so much more possibility for what you can make it do, but you're still stuck with this character that's basically made out of like a bin lid, in 1977, and there's something really charming about the way that looks, because he has that kind of Robbie the Robot thing, like that really stilted 50s almost sort of robot design where he moves in silly ways, and there's clearly a man in there who doesn't really have any freedom of movement. I don't know. C-3PO in this was much more charming just in the way he looked and moved than I felt he has been for a long time.
So, what were what do you see as the film's faults?
Well, like I say, I think there is... Well, we've talked about the kind of racial representation issue, or if not representation, then inclusion. I think we've agreed that that's kind of a fault. I thought it was a problem in a sense, I suppose, to go along with that not only did Rose not have a part to play in basically anything, but also a different woman of colour was introduced sort of in her place. The girl who was previously a stormtrooper as well, and she connects with John Boyega. Like, again, there's a point to that, but it didn't seem all that necessary when Rose was being sidelined. So there was an element that I didn't like. I did have issues initially, like I say, with the idea that they're throwing away so much of what made the previous film so interesting, because the previous film was not well liked by the fans, and there are clear kind of like I say sops to them. There's another element which was in episode 7. It was when Han and Leia reconnect. There was a whole big thing online about how Chewie didn't get a hug. Because Chewie's an old friend as well. Why wasn't he involved? And in this film, that's sort of fixed to the degree that he gets to cry dramatically when he learns that Leia's died. It was so much.
Yeah.
Again, that felt like, for the fans, Chewie's going to cry over Leia. So there are times when you go, oh, I can see what the machinations have been here. Because you didn't want to piss people off, and then you end up with the fans apparently going, oh, I'm not interested. Because I think the thing is, episode 8 is the thing about episode 8 was let's take it really seriously, and do something interesting, and then the fans went, no, it wasn't what I wanted. And so in this film, it was more of kind of, okay, let's stop taking it so seriously, let's have fun again. And then the fans again seem to be going, it's not what I wanted. So you can't please the fans.
Well, and also who are the fans? Because I think actually that the audience is much bigger than the self-designated fans and vocal fans. So I think my only problem, my major problem, though it's not so much of a problem, but anyway, I love that, the film is now focused on a woman. I wish that Daisy Ridley were a better actress.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Because she really fails in her big moments, right? Like, she comes across as really one-dimensional and kind of wooden, right? So, and, people are always comparing her to Keira Knightley. I thought Keira Knightley, even in her first films, was a million times better than that. Keira Knightley. Yeah. And more charismatic as well, right?
I agree.
So there is something... so on the one hand, great that the figure is a woman. On the other hand, I did wish they'd cast better, really. Because, she doesn't have the charisma of a film star to me, and she certainly doesn't have the acting chops to kind of flesh out her big moments. So there's something a little bit empty in the middle of all of this.
I agree with you. But I thought it was interesting because you put on Facebook about it and the whole conversation started, and one of your friends spoke of the film's easy feminism, which I thought was a really interesting phrase, because we've talked about its use of people of colour and characters of colour and the issues we have there, but there isn't a single question that it makes sense to have a woman at the centre of this story and to have female characters be so important. And so the idea that it's feminist but easily feminist is a really interesting one, I think. Like it's a kind of it's a very casual, easy success in that respect.
That's interesting, though. I mean, I'll have to think about that more. I hadn't seen that comment. Must have been lost in a thread. I think it's interesting, though, that when you looked at the first films, were so much about Harrison Ford and
Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill. I think Princess Leia was. Oh, sure, she was the adventurous princess and she joined in the action, but she was still in some ways, in quotation marks, the girl in the film.
Certainly, yeah.
So I think, there is something quite marvelous about, how as time has gone by, the women have become more and more central. I think even in the George Lucas, late 90s, early 2000 ones. And this seems to be like a kind of a culmination. I really like that. So it might be easy feminism in the sense that, the concept of what the hero is really hasn't changed and actually doesn't deal very much with the fact that it is now a woman. Right? But nonetheless, it's kind of, significant and important and kind of thrilling.
That's kind of what I meant. I didn't mean easy in the sense of it's a kind of uncritical or unchallenging version of feminism. I think it probably is, but I meant easy in the sense of it. You don't think, oh, why does she have to be woman? Like, for instance, in episode 7, the first one that J.J. Abrams did, there was quite a lot of dialogue in which Rey would say something that was quite actively sort of, I don't need your help type of thing. Trying to prove herself in this world sort of thing, which I think was really making a point. This one doesn't have any of that. She just is who she is. Yeah. That's what I mean easy. It's kind of, it's just smooth.
Yes. Though, my God, in the context of, all those fan interactions were so misogynist and disgusting. Like, people so hated the fact, that the action figure in this film was now a woman. It's kind of
Actually, to be fair, the most misogynist and aggressive things were towards Kelly Marie Tran, who plays Rose, to the point where she'd deleted her internet accounts and things because it was so vile. And I hadn't thought about it, but maybe that's a reason that she has a reduced role in this. Maybe she even asked for that because she didn't want that again.
Right.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. The whole thing about the race and the gender is to me kind of signified by the sexuality, because the internet has been full of, there's a gay character in Star Wars, and you think, fucking shit, like, you have to keep your eyes peeled for these extras in the background who kiss, right? Like, that's all, right? Like, it's extras. I was thinking, oh my God, like, maybe the Oscar Isaac's character or somebody like that is going to, be shown to have a partner. No, it's on fucking extras. Like,
But the other thing is, they weren't in the background. They were given their own shots. Notice these two women kissing and then cut away.
Oh right. You know what I mean? Like, slightly out of focus. I mean, really.
No, they were. It was a second long shot that was all about them, and then you move on. But I think that kind of points to the same thing. There was a kind of corporate level of inclusivity in that. It's just like
Okay, so I suppose we're saying the same thing because in a film world where you can have Jabba the Hutt, have a major role, but you have to put two women kissing as like extra close, extras given a close up. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, really.
Yeah. But I was surprised how much I liked it because my brother saw it on opening night. He saw it like a midnight screening, and he came out. And I said, don't tell me anything, obviously, but he was basically seemed a bit. I wouldn't even say disappointed. I think he just sounded, I don't know, resigned or like he was over it. I suppose in a sense that I went into this with slightly lower expectations than I otherwise would because I had found out in the previous couple of days that it was directed by J.J. Abrams, where I thought it was Rian Johnson, and so I would have had much higher expectations. So maybe that kind of helped me enjoy it more, and it helped me get into the swing of things. Because, like I say, once I realised, okay, you're throwing away a lot of interesting stuff, that's disappointing. But then you're obviously doing a much more unimaginative thing. But I think it did all of the unimaginative stuff really well.
Yeah,
It did like a really well made caper. Good versus evil, the bad people become good, all this, all that stuff, which none of it I think is very original. I don't think it makes really any moves that you don't really expect it to, other than maybe, I suppose, the revelation that Rey is a Palpatine is kind of an interesting one. Like, they haven't made her someone who you've heard of. They made her like the most important sort of powerful thing. So I guess that was kind of interesting. But again, didn't really go into places I didn't expect it to. But I was still happy with the way it went into those places. I think it worked. It told its story very well, and I felt for its characters. And I think at the end it has, it does a whole Dunkirk thing at the end.
Yeah,
they're ordinary people, sir, in all their boats. Which was kind of nice. Although I think the Star Wars music, it plays the theme over that, failed. I mean, that felt completely flat to me. It's supposed to feel so triumphant, and it didn't.
I've been seeing these films since I was 15 years old, right?
Yeah,
and it's interesting because I didn't really love the first one. My favorite was the second one. And then when I was in grad school, I saw them all again. Kind of killing time watching the VHS. Then I saw all of the George Lucas middle cycle, even disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. And actually this last three is really the ones I've liked most, really. And this one in particular, I kind of, I'm not claiming it's a great masterpiece or even that it's a great film, but, I had a really good time watching it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it felt like a big budget spectacular. It still, contained all the mythos, that kind of enable its audience to almost treat it like a religion, to read all kinds of important things into it, to kind of, it's like a little rubric or a structure through which kind of people understand their own lives. That's still all there. It had romance, which, to me was important, right? And it was believable. I loved the whole, Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley kind of thing, going from one dimension to another through what they share. And I thought all of that was lovely. So really, I think it's one of my favorites. Really, I enjoyed it. Would
you still sort of agree with me though that the romance, as obvious as it is by the end, that they have a real romantic bond between them? I think it is still downplayed or played in a certain way that means you can mistake it for something else, or that it's kind of subtle. Like, because it's not really flat out. It's not at all flat out romance. It's about beliefs and a kind of bond.
But no, it's also about. I would argue that it is very much about romance, but it's in the romance of ethical and moral considerations, right? So she says, "I would have taken your hand as Ben, but not as Kylo Rey." Right, so all of that stuff is going on. It is about kind of having feelings for the other person, but having feelings for the other person, within ethical and moral conflicts, right? Like, I'm not going to join your thing. I have my own thing. Yes, you're trying to steal this from me, but on the other hand, they're tied to each other, right? So and mind you, kind of that has always been part of the Star Wars world. I remember, like, Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker are tied. They're twins, right? They they don't know it, but they share things, right? So that could have been done in that way. It's just another storyline might have turned that into a brotherhood or a sisterhood, but this is much more than that. It is. So I think it's there. I think it's there in a really interesting ways, because that's not the end in itself. There are things that are more important than feelings or love or sex. There are worlds at stake, right?
Well, if anything, the feelings are what gets in the way of that.
Yeah.
If anything, if the feelings weren't there, things would be a lot easier for the two characters to fight and disagree with each other and all the rest. And I liked. I don't know about you. I liked when they all just hugged for a long time at the end. You know, I thought they deserved it. Frankly.
Yes.
You know,
it's been like 42 years, so they deserve a hug.
Yeah. Well, just all the characters who, you know, I must say I didn't like actually Billy D. Williams. I didn't like it. I mean, not so much him as an actor, as a performance, but I don't care enough about Lando Calrissian, and he had such a big part, and he had one of those lines of dialogue that I found very clunky, where they go back, you know, they want to go back and rescue Finn and the girlies who are about to die. And then he goes, but the Millennium Falcon's faster. Don't you remember from the old films?
I mean, the thing is...
He had a lot of that. He had a lot of, remember me?
Yeah, I think the problem with that character is that it felt tokenistic.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of, you know, you have to bring him back, but it's not because he was so significant, you know, to the earlier films. It's because he's the only black major figure, you know, in the whole of the series.
I suppose. I mean, it didn't feel to me like they had to bring him back, because he was never, as you say, a major figure at all. I don't know that it felt that him being a black person had anything to do with that. I think it just brought it back because he could.
No, I think had the same character been played by, you know, some 70s supporting star, white supporting star, they wouldn't have brought him back. I mean, you know, well, the three protagonists really are Carrie Fisher, you know, and Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill for sure, right? So they kind of, you know, it's a goodbye thing, right? I think, and this is what I mean, that bringing Billy D. Williams is tokenistic, because I think if he hadn't been, you know, that major black figure in the franchise before the John Boyega character, well, that's not true.
No, I think you probably are about right. I mean, who else was there? There was Samuel L. Jackson. He wasn't really major.
Yeah, he wasn't. So I think that's why it feels...
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Artificial.
I'm not sure that I agree with you, but I can certainly see your argument.
Anyway, the character is extraneous to the narrative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you have to ask yourself, why are you bringing him back? You know. So I suppose maybe because, you know, it might very well be because black audiences have the same kind of affection for that character as everybody else does for Carrie Fisher or Harrison Ford. I don't know. You know, so that would be enough of a good reason. But, you know, it felt tokenistic to me.
Yeah. I think generally people have, you know, whether black or white or whatever, people have fond memories of Lando. He was kind of fondly, people enjoyed him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah,
he's not a major.
He had that again, like J.J. Abrams thing of going, remember the past, remember the 70s, remember when we grew up, let's do it all again, and that's how you get Donald Trump.
Anyway, I might make the point more elegantly. The thing about that character is everybody is fond of him. It's true. I mean, Billy D. Williams was a joy, but he's just not a central character.
Yeah,
you know. So, you know, this whole attempt at kind of giving him so much space in this particular film has, I think, the opposite of the intended effect, which is instead of being inclusive, it just feels tokenistic.
Yeah. I wonder how much money it's made.
A lot.
One would assume.
I think it's made 340 million or something in its opening week or weekend.
Let's have a look. Domestic, 175. Worldwide, everything included, 373 so far.
There you go.
And it's on a $250 to $300 million budget, I think.
Yes. It's a very expensive film, and it looks it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, because the thing about Star Wars, in comparison to other major franchisey, Hollywoody, Marvel-y, all the rest, is Star Wars has always been much more US-centric in its market.
Yes.
You know, it's always done less well outside the US than these other films do. I'm
not sure that's any longer true. I mean, certainly in my experience, like, my God, you know, you don't get like worse Star Wars fanatics than in England, you know, and it's huge in Spain, and you know, I can't think of a country where it isn't huge actually. No,
it's huge everywhere, but in comparison to, you know, if you look at like the proportion of its box office, US compared to the rest of the world is much higher for Star Wars, and I think it still is than it is for things like Marvel and things, which which have a stronger kind of worldwide reach in a sense. I mean, the thing about Americans for me is like they never seem to realise what a great great artists they have. All the film artists, or people like Jackson Pollock or Mark Twain, all these great, and they just go, no, it's all Star Wars. Star Wars is the only thing we've ever done.
I'm not sure that's true. Anyway, so last words.
I liked it, and I think I don't care who it disappoints because I had a really good time with it, and I think it's a cracking, adventure-y, capery, with lots of wit and humour and drama and fighting and space. Choo-choo!
Excellent. Thank you very much for listening. We are Eavesdropping at the Movies, and we are on
iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify to listen to. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Live long and prosper.